If you're crazy enough to do what you love for a living, you are bound to create a life that matters. Mark Thompson is executive coach, Virgin Success Superman Sir Richard Branson calls for advice. He has discovered why successful people stay successful and how you can too. Good to be here with you today and with the multifaceted business growth and change expert Mark Thompson, who knows how to grow leaders from good to great. He's interviewed high achievers like Bono, Bill Clinton, Steve Forbes, and Deepak Chopra about what tickles their passions, why they keep achieving and achieving and achieving, much like himself. Hello.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me in beautiful Vancouver.
No kidding.
It's a gorgeous day, my goodness.
And we didn't pay your way, did we?
No, but the Chamber of Commerce definitely has gotten me buying every piece of property that I see as I walk down the street. It's beautiful here.
I bet they do. And you've done a lot of that, I'm assuming.
Indeed, that's right. We've had a wonderful journey. I just came from New York where we were at the Tonys and having a great time with all the wonderful people there, as looking at how New York has changed as well.
And you were at the Tonys for a reason. Yes,
it was the first time I'd ever had Tony nominations, and we won four Tonys, and this was an extraordinary experience, because when you see how these people live their passions and are able to express themselves on a dramatic format, it's like any other business. People finding a way to get their mojo, decide what they want to do, persist like crazy, and make it happen. You know?
And sometimes they don't make all that much money, those actors, as you know.
That's true. You know, it's got to be a labor of love. First.
Well, once you hit Broadway,
yes, right.
I assume the wage goes up.
Yes, I hope
but
so.
There are a lot of gypsies and very talented people who work in theater and don't make squat, really. So, the three of you, thought leaders.
Yes.
You a venture capitalist with a giant resume, lots of success stories. You get together with Jerry Porras and Stuart Emery and come together and define success. And when you do that, what do you say it is?
You know, it's amazing, because we were looking for the longest time to see what success really meant to people, and it's fascinating. If you ask people what success is, you'll hear many different definitions. I think most people live by default. You know, they haven't actually thought, how am I defining success? Does it mean money, for example? Does it mean fame? Does it mean that I want to have impact? And what we found when we interviewed people all over the world who were really high achievers is that they always had a sense of purpose, that they wanted to have impact on others, that they wanted to be able to live their own passions, you know, something that they'd secretly do for free, something that really turns them on. And they wanted to have an ability to show some score, or have a performance, or deliver on their promises. So it's usually those three aspects that came together to create a life that mattered.
And I assume most of them are fairly resilient, because sometimes you fail.
Yes.
And then you have to do what they say, fail up.
Right, exactly. It's fascinating. You look at people like Charles Schwab, a billionaire. It was really 6, 7, 8 businesses that he had to go through before he really found the one that worked. You see somebody like Richard Branson, who is a serial entrepreneur, tries again and again to try to reinvent and make things better in terms of a customer experience for people. And he's failed as many times.
Well, you worked for Schwab.
I did.
So you do know.
Exactly. I saw that firsthand, and I saw it when we went through market crashes and the horrible transformation that has occurred in the financial services business. But you know, he's always kept the highest level of integrity. He's always been the honest guy, the trusted uncle that you could really go to. When he kept his integrity, he was able to grow his business even in the toughest of times.
What about his team?
You know, his team has been interesting, because he brought people who look like the customer. You know, it's men, women, young, old. You know, it's interesting when you're really trying to grow a career or a business, you need to be a reflection, a mirror of your customer. And that's how people really achieve success long term, if you stick with it, if you're willing to have it be an authentic passion of yours, and if you really want to tell the truth about what's really inside your heart, that's what people can connect with. They can see right through a fake. You know, when you're really pursuing that passion and you want to have success that's lasting, that's how you do it. You connect with your own heart.
And I also want to go where you've gone. That too, if you set a great example. Sir Richard Branson, now, take me back to his rugby days.
Oh my goodness. So here's a guy who thought he had it made because he was going to be an athlete, but then his knee was shattered and so were his dreams at the same time. Now this is a guy who was dyslexic, struggled in school. I can relate to that, Charles Schwab. had that problem. There are many great entrepreneurs who really weren't reading well or writing well, didn't have great Ivy League prospects.
Right, and politicians. Sir Winston Churchill. I guess he was more than a sir.
Yes, right. I think he ended up having a big job in the UK.
I think so. I hear tell.
I heard something about that. And people who, it's interesting, people who've suffered some sort of weakness, so-called handicap, can harvest that. There are people like Charles Schwab or Richard Branson who end up being the nicest guys in the world because they have the humility to know that we all have flaws, and that if we face those flaws and use it as a way to connect with other people, in other words, to make things simple for others, and to have the humility to ask and be interested in other people. Some of those people who have so-called learning disabilities turn their wounds into wisdom. They're able to really harvest those weaknesses to connect with other people. That coping mechanism that allowed them to get through school meant, I need you, I need your help, I need the help of others to build a business or build a career. So people who think they're the smartest in the room don't necessarily connect the easiest to other people.
That's true. But as you suggest, there are many dyslexics or people with learning disabilities who are at the top of the firm.
Absolutely.
Yes, they are. Now back to this Branson guy.
Yes, so he goes on and he decides to make a life that's got to do something more with helping empower other people to build businesses rather than to become an athlete, because that was not the choice that was on the table anymore.
Right, he was injured and couldn't play rugby anymore or something like that.
Right.
But then, was his first office in a crypt?
Absolutely.
Like in a,
can you imagine cold stone, frightening sort of a place? You know, you work where you have to.
Apparently.
You do what you've got to do. And that's the thing that also unifies people who have lasting success, is that it's the outcome that they're after, not maybe necessarily a fancy office. Right. That definitely wasn't a fancy office.
No, well, and I guess the rent's free.
The rent was the lowest you could possibly have. But he was creating a new way of connecting between students and the public. And that's what Richard really does. He always tries to find a way to reinvent an old idea in a way that's more modern, more connected, more personal, more authentic.
And his disappointments, because there always are those.
Yes, indeed. There's lots of those. For example, he tried to take on Coca-Cola. You know, there isn't a brand that's kind of big, a few people know about it, and he decides that, you know, it's just brown sugar water. I can do better. I can make a difference. It turns out that was one of the most spectacular cases where it didn't turn out as well as he had hoped. Although there is a group of former Virgin executives who decided to go do a smoothie company that's actually doing quite well. So sometimes you spawn ideas, not the first time, but keep on going through the different flavors, and you might have one that's popular.
And the music biz, his love.
The music biz was a love. Can you imagine selling your favorite business, the music business, in order to start an airline for humans' transformation? I mean, that's not something you'd see the same as being the creativity of music, but it ended up being something where he would make an impact. If you've ever traveled on Virgin Atlantic, you'd see the difference.
Yes, yes, for sure. You say in here, in Success Built to Last, you don't have to be charismatic to be successful.
Absolutely.
Well, it's got to help.
Well, I think it does, but you know what really happens? Most of these people that you meet who have been high achievers for a long time, Nobel laureates and Academy Award winners, these are people, I mean, those are ones who are trained to be presenters on stage. But the person who is making an impact, who's been successful as a CEO, most of these people you walk right by on the street. It's not until you tap something that they believe deeply in their heart. They're more like Superman or Superwoman. You ask them about what they care about, they step into a phone booth, they take the call, they come out just ebullient. You can feel energy when you connect with people. When they talk about their passion, they come to life. That's when you get the shining eyes.
So when you talk to a politician, a high political figure, a Senator John McCain, for instance, a Madeleine Albright, a Condoleezza Rice. I don't know if you talked to Condi Rice or not.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so when you ask them what drives them, you would think the answer would be current affairs, politics, making a difference. Are you often surprised at what the answer is? Condoleezza Rice, pianist.
Yes, well, you know,
likes to play the piano. Maybe that is more important than Secretary of State.
What's really interesting about anyone who's had a life that matters, who creates a life that matters, I think we get stuck in thinking that there's just one thing to do with your life, that there's just one passion you can pursue. And what we found is that more often than not, everybody has this portfolio of passions. And it's important to feed those, because when Condi Rice is having a tough day, you know, in politics, she can go home and heal herself on the piano. And when you have people like all of those who are engaged in almost an obsession that they have. It's great to go back and connect with other passions that you have,
right.
to recharge and reboot and be able to reconnect. So most of these people do have a place of sanctuary, and it's their other passions.
So some balance.
Yeah, that's
some
their
balance.
Exactly.
So when you are a high-profile figure like a President Bill Clinton and you get in the glue.
Yes, indeed. Then you go for a run. You don't want to talk to Bill Clinton on a day that he hasn't taken one of his runs.
Okay, so
that's one of his passions.
One of his coping mechanisms.
It's a coping mechanism and a passion. It's a way for him to reconnect. And another way for him to connect is the fact that he's a brilliant man. So he is constantly engaged now with issues all over the world with the Clinton Initiative. It's amazing to watch him now. These ex-presidents, what they do with their lives is amazing.
Well, what he really wanted to do probably when he was in the White House, but Congress didn't exactly allow that. So now he can go where he really wanted to go in the first place, not everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly. But
we won't go there.
Imagine what a difference you can make if you're not having to worry about taking a vote on every issue. You can actually just focus on, curing disease or changing people's lives. That's
well, and I
thing.
think Senator McCain points out in here that you have to trust your gut, and when you know it's right, you have to stay there.
Yes.
In spite of all the naysayers and the people who tell you this is not the right move, but you know in your soul it's the right move.
I think it makes a real difference for people. I think to be connected with something that you passionately care about is perhaps the biggest gift that you could give yourself and other people. People know when you're not passionate about something. The people who are passionate, I was talking to Warren Buffett about this. So Warren Buffett.
Of course you were. Were you playing bridge with Buffett or just talking to him?
He would kill me at bridge like he does Bill Gates and so many other people. But it's interesting. Here he has 200 companies or more that he has to be blessing as a part of his constellation or portfolio. And here's a guy who gets pitched things all the time. Can you imagine people ask Warren, what should I do with my career? Or what should I do with this business? And he says he's amazed at how many people are focused just on the market or just the business model, and they're not focused on their own passion. And he says, people will say, I'll do my passion on the weekend or on the evening, not at work. I'll do it in my next job. And he says, people putting off their passions, that's like saving up sex for old age. It's a really bad idea.
Bad idea.
we have to be feeling fully energized and alive about it
Doesn't mean if you're 80 you can't have hot sex.
That's the idea.
It just means don't wait.
You should have it your whole life, and you should have. Maya Angelou told me a similar thing. Here's this tall woman, on Amazon, 6 feet tall, and she says, I think God should just strike you down for not living all your passions at work.
And one of the grand passionate poets,
yes.
a poet laureate, renowned, and you know her, so you know her story, the caged bird story.
Oh my goodness. The great adversity that she faced, being a cable car operator and a madam and a single mom and a person who had to face all sorts of discrimination.
Yeah,
and
sexually abused when she was 8. I think she didn't speak except to her brother, if I've got the story right.
That's right.
For 4 years.
It was an amazing shutdown of her emotional systems when she had been violated. And here's another person who found that poison and turned it into wisdom, who found that place of passion and unleashed it on the world that was unleashed by much of her pain as well. She felt that she was driven to tell the world her story through poetry, and how many other people does she heal with that story? And that's why she says, live full out. Use all your senses in the work.
Live out loud.
Yes,
joy, stamina, passion, all of that. But a Maya person, I'm sure, when she was 8, didn't dream one day she would be,
of course not,
at the inaugural talking to the world.
And a lot of high achievers don't.
Or did she?
No, a lot of high achievers really, Steve Covey does an amazing job with helping us think about starting with the end in mind in our life. But most people who achieved greatness or high achievers in some field or profession, if you ask them, did you imagine spending time with the president? Did you imagine that you would be this high achiever in this way? They say no.
Really?
What they really do is that they said that I wanted to commit my life to acting, or I want to commit my life to having an impact on a community. They are living their passion, and then fame or power or money is a dividend.
Okay, well, when we come back, we'll talk about where luck fits in.
Okay.
Okay. Mark Thompson, our guest, Success Built to Last, Creating a Life That Matters, his book, along with Jerry Porras and Stuart Emery, and we'll tell you about them, too.